A few days ago, our great-grandmother died in one of the rooms. That room had been locked ever since, and everyone avoided it. But when you're a child, playing with your brother, you forget many fears. He and I decided to play hide and seek. I, laughing, suggested a new idea, locking my brother in my great-grandmother's room. He protested, but I was older and stronger. He gave in to my persuasions and didn't notice how he found himself in the corridor leading to that room. There seemed to be quiet rustling coming from behind the door. I shoved him playfully and slammed the door shut, leaving him in the dark. He tried to open it, but the lock clicked, leaving him alone in the ominous silence. The room was saturated with a musty odor mixed with something sweet, reminiscent of old perfume. He stood there, listening to the sounds that seemed all too real. Gradually, his eyes grew accustomed to the darkness, and he began to recognize the outlines of the furniture. Suddenly, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I thought it was strange, because I had locked it. The footsteps were barely audible, as if someone was sneaking on the old wooden floor. The footsteps got louder and louder as they got closer to the door. Suddenly, they stopped. My heart was beating so hard I thought I could hear it. Suddenly, the door began to slowly open. He froze, unable to move, watching the doorknob turn on its own. The door creaked quietly and swung open. There was a shadow in the hallway. It was vague, blurred, but it grew clearer with each passing moment. It was the silhouette of a woman, and he immediately realized who it was. It was her, the great-grandmother. Her face was contorted with a grimace of pain. Her eyes were empty, and a low moan came from her mouth. His brother began to back away, feeling the cold sweat running down his back. The shadow was getting closer, her hands reaching for him. Step by step it drew closer, its face increasingly distorted. He rushed to run. The corridor seemed endless, and the shadow's footsteps grew louder and louder. My heart was pounding frantically, and suddenly, he was gone. I couldn't find him anywhere. I could only hear his screams of pain. I ran into the living room, but it was no ordinary living room. It was filled with old, dusty furniture, as if time didn't exist here. There was a rocking chair in the corner, and it rocked slowly, as if someone had just gotten up from it. There was the smell of old perfume in the air. I heard a low whisper. It filled the room, penetrating my ears, making my blood run cold in my veins. The whisper grew louder and louder, and I realized it was coming from the chair. I rose slowly, trying not to make a sound, and headed for the door. Suddenly, I felt something cold touch my foot. I looked down and saw my brother, who was being devoured by a black shadow, blood oozing from his eyes, begging for help, but I couldn't move a fingertip. At that moment, the door to the room opened, and there I stood, my eyes lifeless and black. She rushed toward my brother, tearing his flesh apart, slathering herself in his blood. I could no longer look at this horror. I ran out into the street and sat waiting for my parents until nightfall. From that day on, every night when I went to the bathroom, I saw a copy of myself covered in his blood, telling me that I was next.